Sure. So I own and run LightPath LED. So we do home use red light therapy devices. I also have, or recently had a wellness center as well. So I would see clients and we would do not just light, but infrared sauna, vibration play, laser as well. So this has been, my area of expertise for the last, probably 5 or 6 years.
Amazing. That's amazing. And we were just talking about this before that you're in a nice area in upstate New York, nice and quiet, away from Manhattan. That's so nice.
Yeah, our neighbors are cows and corn,
Oh,
and the Amish will, even in the
yeah.
wintertime, you'll hear the horse feet
Oh my
clopping
gosh.
the road. So it's, as you know, it's a completely different world from living in the city or right outside of the city. I
Yeah.
was probably up here for about 3 weeks before I had my first case of kind of road rage. And I thought to myself, wow, it's been 3 weeks. This
Wow.
is the place I need to be.
Yeah, I know people don't realize when you say New York that New York is actually a huge state
Yeah.
and giant. And people always just think Manhattan, the city, which sure, there's probably there's tons of people in the city. The population is mainly there. But when you actually explore the other areas of New York, it's like farmland and absolutely beautiful. And you can have land and have a farm and have animals and
Yeah.
be relaxed.
I mean, there's amazing sites, anywhere from, you go to Niagara Falls,
Yeah. Oh,
from the top left corner all the way down to the, bottom right of Manhattan and Long Island. And it's a gigantic state. You could literally
yeah.
drive, in certain areas, you can basically drive a half an hour without seeing a stoplight or a
Yeah.
stop sign or a building.
Yeah, it's true. It's really true. As a native New Yorker myself, I understand. Let's talk a little bit about LightPath. So I found your Instagram and just your product, I was telling you before, through a few people. And I purchased one during Black Friday because you had a great situation for Black Friday. I was like, I'm going to take advantage of this. And I'm kind of like a nomad. So for right now, for me to purchase one was a pretty big deal. But I know a lot of people have been hearing about your red light company. And just because it's a bit different, I think that you guys have a lot going for you. So why don't you dive into like what are the differences and what is red light? Let's just start there. Let's do what is red light first.
Okay, basic.
Very
Red
basic.
light. Red light, it's a little bit of a misnomer. It's technically, there's a reason why they call it red light, because the technical name is photobiomodulation, and no one's going to remember that or
Yeah.
say that. But it's obvious because we see red light coming from the device. So it makes
Yeah.
sense. People are going to call it red light therapy, although there's other colors. So what we're doing with light is they found, and this has been researched since the 70s. And there's reason why there's a lot of professional athletic teams. There's Olympic US teams that are using light therapy because it helps recovery. It helps increase blood flow. It helps increase oxygen so they can exert themselves harder when they're performing. They can have less recovery time, healing.
Yeah.
You've got a home run when you've got these professional teams
Yeah.
using it, because they're not just going to, they're not going to waste their athletes' times with some woo-woo stuff that isn't scientifically proven. So
Right.
all we've really done is taken specific wavelengths of light. We look around, we've got light everywhere. So we go back to school, we remember going through the visible spectrum of light, Roy G. Biv.
Yeah.
So red, orange, yellow on down.
Yeah.
What they found is that specific wavelengths in the red and then specific wavelengths in the near infrared, which is just beyond our visible spectrum. But, if you wore goggles, you could see it, or if you got an old phone, you can see it as well. But those specific wavelengths of light enter our body. Think about it like photosynthesis with plants. They actually are absorbed into the cells, into the mitochondria, which, again, back to high school, the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah.
That then basically, I mean, there's a whole process, but it basically kickstarts the mitochondria to produce more ATP, which is the energy that is 90% of our daily energy. We actually turn over our body weight in ATP every single day. So ATP is what we need for our brain to think, for our eyes to see, for our muscles to flex, for our lungs to expand, for our heart to beat. Without it, we're dead. So what what they found is that mitochondria, that's the big thing, is that so many of our dysfunctions, disorders, diseases, we always talk about inflammation. Of course, go a step deeper, it's mitochondrial dysfunction, which to the great majority we all have to some degree because we live in a world of stress,
Toxicity.
toxicity, a sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, not clean water, stress, all these other things that, build and accumulate over time. And we're starting to look towards, certain things, whether it's supplements or biohacking kind of technologies that can help better our health, and trying to avoid as much as we can the kind of the Western medicine of, popping pills to kind of, cover up whatever ailments we've got. So the light can come at us in certain ways. We can have a panel, which is a rectangular square hard device with bulbs that shine light towards our body. We can have a pad, which is flexible, kind of like a heat pad, and we can put it and wrap it over a certain specific area. We've got small like flashlight torches that you can put to use for meridian points that work very similar to dry needling. You can have caps that you can wear for either brain type issues or for, hair loss. So there's all kinds of devices out there. What we try to focus with at LightPath is, one, keeping up with the science and making sure that anything that we do with our devices is going to be backed by the science. And as science changes, we change. And then more importantly is just the customer support, is the fact that you've got someone that you can actually call, or you got a Facebook group that you can ask questions. Because the last thing you want to do is spend a ton of money on something that you're either not going to use correctly, or you're just going to get so confused with it, you're just going to stick it in the corner and it's going to be an expensive dust collector.
Yeah. And I agree with that. Like that, if you're not seeing those benefits, then you need to ask some questions and figure out how to use it the best way for you. And you definitely don't want it to be collecting dust in a corner, because that would be a very expensive dust collector.
And we all have those. We all have purchased things that at the time we thought, okay, this is really going to help me out. Whether it was for health related or just completely something else. And then you look back and you're like, gosh, I wish I didn't spend that money.
Yeah, true. So I recently purchased one, and I'll talk about my experience here. And I had used one a couple years ago in the past that wasn't LightPathLED, and I didn't really feel any changes. And I think I had actually talked to my friend Freddie about it, and he was like, no, you got to get one that's pulsed. You got to get the pulsed, and you got to get the near infrared light. So can you dive into what the difference is between, I guess, what near infrared light is and then the pulse? Because there's a lot of settings on this machine. I don't even know what they all do, but I've read through the little manual. There's different things you can set it to, and that's where you'll see the benefits if you know how to use it ultimately.
Yeah. So most devices will incorporate both red light and near infrared. The real difference between the two, there, more in-depth differences, but really the red is a little bit more superficial. The red is perfectly good for skin and just underlying, because it gets really absorbed into the blood. So it's not going to get much beyond the capillary bed, where the near infrared isn't as absorbed by hemoglobin. So it'll pass deeper into the body. So the near infrared is good for bones, for joints, for brain, for organs, for lymphatic. But the combination of the two is really good. So we're getting, this far with the red, we're getting this far, with the near infrared. So you'll see most devices will carry both of those. The key, and what we've got a pretty good amount of decent research more recently, is pulsing.
Mm-hmm.
Pulsing is simply the on and off of the light, but it's very specific. So it could be, 2.5 hertz, right, or 2.5 times a second, all the way up to 10,000 times per second. And what they found with research is that it gives a greater benefit above non-pulsing, or what you'd call continuous wave. They're still kind of working out the reasons behind why they're getting better results. But in general, it's helping to open up the water sheath around the cell wall to make it more permeable, so more nutrients, particularly calcium, can get into the cells and feed the mitochondria to produce more ATP. There's also a benefit with the resonance, so like brain entrainment. So we know they've studied this with sound as well, where like 40 hertz, 40 times per second, is very beneficial for any kind of whether preventative or cognitive impairment. So more and more work is being done for people with simply depression, anxiety, all the way up to Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. And they're using that, either the 10 pulses per second or 40, because they match with our brain waves, whether it's our gamma or our alpha.
Very interesting. And, sometimes you can feel and see the pulsing on the machine. It just depends on the hertz, right? So can you tell me and our audience just the differences between that? Because I noticed when I'm at, I think 1.0 or 10, the lowest one, I can really see that. And when I'm much higher in the hertz, you don't see it. But I know it's still occurring.
Right. So it's right about 80 is when our eyes cannot detect it because it's going so fast. So it's like a movie reel. It's a bunch of individual pictures, but they're going so fast that it just looks like it's live.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with the light.
It feels continuous, but it's actually not. It's still pulsing.
It's still pulsing.
And you can use the different settings. Like I've talked to you about this. You can use one specific setting in the morning and a different setting at night, which is what I've been doing. But I guess you can go a little deeper into that, like how you can use the settings to really hit what you need to make it person specific.
Right. I like to use 40 in the morning. And for a lot of people like me, I probably only use it in the morning. That's about it.
That's interesting.
15 minutes on my front, 15 minutes on my back. I'll do some Wim Hof breath work at the same time, two birds with one stone.
So nice.
But I really like the 40. It's good for inflammation. It's good for brain health as well. But yeah, there's other types of pulsing that they've either through research or through, anecdotal from people that have been doing this stuff in a wellness center for 20, 30 years that use these different kinds of pulses to say, okay, well, 294 is been shown both with research to be very healthy for the eyes. 587, really good for increasing lymphatic flow. 4698 is really good for pain because it helps to block the C pain fibers. So yeah, each one is a little bit different, but I try to simplify it because there's no bad pulse. Every one of them is going to be beneficial. We just want to tweak it to find the right one. So if someone is dealing with sleep issues or anxiety, I'll have them pulse it at 10 or maybe even manually put in something like 7 or 8. And that has been shown research-wise on the stomach area, interestingly enough, to reduce anxiety, depression.
That's so interesting. And I was doing 10 for a while, but it is kind of hard to sit forward facing with the 10, I think.
It's a bit psychedelic.
It's kind of a cool experience if you're like doing meditation. Because like for me, I'm forcing myself to do it for like 20 minutes in the morning. So I split it in half and 8 to 10 of those minutes I'm trying to meditate. And it's been a difference in routine for me to do that for the last couple months. And I think it's been really great. I don't always meditate, but I'm trying. But I think just giving yourself that time in the morning. But yeah, talk about that 10 and why it's like really like that. Because it comes with goggles. So I guess you can use the goggles. We'll talk about eyes with it too. But yeah, talk about that 10 setting, because I know it's something that I kind of struggle to use a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, for me, that pulsing for the first 2 months was really annoying because even with your eyes closed,
you still feel it and see it.
You still want to close. I mean,
it's almost like EMDR, like there's the music going back and forth and you can kind of, your eyes are moving. It feels like that.
Yeah. But I've had other people that right out of the gate they're like, wow, I find that pulsing so relaxing.
Interesting.
And so everyone is a little different. So I tell people, what, if it's, pulsing for the great majority of people, it's totally fine. Some people are annoyed by it like I was. And some people can actually, have certain issues because if they have, say, some people can get migraines, from flashing of light. Like if you went into like an old warehouse and they're all flickering above, and that if that
Yeah.
gave you any kind of nauseous feeling, whatever, then I say, okay, either wear the goggles, don't do the pulsing, or do it at a higher pulsing where it's not that obvious flashing.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, but something about 10, I was looking into that, and there was something interesting about 10 specifically, how it had a little bit of a different reaction. Everything's just transferred information. So the eyes are just taking in the information to the retinas. They're turning into an electrical signal that gets sent to the brain. But there was something interesting about 10 that caused that little bit of that kind of that psychedelic type feeling. I can't remember exactly what it was,
Okay.
but yeah, when I do 10, I get that it's just a completely different feel from the other pulse rates.
I do like 40 because I do feel like that feels really nice. We learn about this with what I study. It's like an interoception. You know what you're feeling, but you might not be able to like verbalize it. And there's something about red light that I feel, but I can't always put into words what I feel. I want to talk about with eyes. So people don't always know, can we look at the red light? Can we not look at the red light? What's the deal? It comes, or is it not great for our eyes? Is it really good for our eyes? I get that question when I posted about it.
Yeah,
So.
really good for the eyes. So again, we got to look back at, okay, inflammation. Most things, age-related macular degeneration, they're using light for successfully now. Glaucoma, there's an inflammatory component to both of those. Go a deeper level, it's a mitochondrial dysfunction. The eyes use the most energy of any cells in the body. So it has the most mitochondria per cell. It's using the most energy in our body. So it needs to literally be fed more than every other cell. Close seconds are brain, nerve, muscle. So we put in the goggles for those people who are overly sensitive. Maybe you just had cataract surgery and they recommend, wearing sunglasses outside for the next year. The light may just be too bright for you at that time. Other people just may be sensitive. Maybe they're taking antibiotic or some other types of medication that might make them a little bit more photosensitive. And so that's, you can wear goggles. You could just wear your, when you go to bed, you got your sleep mask.
Yeah.
Perfectly good. But it's just a matter of the brightness. That's really it. It's no different than if you're walking out in sunlight and your reaction is not going to be to go and stare at the sun when it's super bright. You're going to know better to turn your head to the side or close your eyes. It's the same thing with light. But I tell people, just keep your eyes closed because it is bright. The light's going to perfectly pass through the eyelids, and it's going to have not only does it have a healing benefit for the eyes, but again, that's information. The eyes are really the only two parts of the brain that actually stick out through the skull.
I was just going to say that.
Right.
It's your brain. And people don't think about it like that. And I do a lot of stuff with vision, but people don't realize like that's your insider way to hack your brain. So that's kind of really great information to know that if you do red light, close your eyes, you don't have that sensitivity, like maybe discomfort, but you're still getting the positive benefits of the red light going in your skull into your brain.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
And think about it. Although light can pass through the head, through the skull, it's only a small amount. But interestingly enough, that small amount is enough to make real-time changes deep into the brain. But a lot of the light that we get is going to be through more openings, either through the sinuses, through the eyes, up through the nasal cavities as well. So yeah, we can just close our eyes. Absolutely do that.
And how does it work with clothes? So what is it recommended to do? And I'll tell you what I do because I don't do it with clothes. I'm naked. And I think it's very refreshing to do it like that. And I don't know for our audience, like the size of these, I mean, I'm short, but the size of these machines are pretty big. They will cover a large surface area. And I know there's a specific beam angle. And actually that was one reason I decided on LightPath was that you have a different beam angle than some of the other companies. You have a better beam angle, which is what Freddie had told me. And we can talk about beam angle as well. But yeah, does it go through clothes if you do have clothes on or not?
Minimal. It depends on the clothing. Like if you just had a thin white cotton t-shirt, maybe half of the light would get through it. But if you had like what you're wearing now or what I'm wearing, no, nothing would get through that. So yeah, you just disrobe whatever you're working on.
And I
And
mean, you have different things that you can actually hold the machine up with too. So you could mount it and be higher. I have the floor stand, so I can easily move it around.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways. So I guess let's talk a little bit about beam angle and why that can matter too when deciding on which machine to purchase.
Yeah. So when we talk about beam angle, it's just like a flashlight. When you turn on a flashlight, it starts off at the end point where the light flashes through, and it obviously covers a greater area. So for a flashlight, you may want something that is wide, has a wide beam angle, covers a bigger area, or you may want something with a smaller beam angle that's more focused and it's going to be brighter in that area. So that energy is all going to be going to that spot as opposed to that energy being diffused and not having as much power. So if I've got the panel in front of me and say it's 12 inches wide, and say from shoulder to shoulder, I'm about 18 inches wide, I don't want it to be 0-degree beam angle because I'm only hitting right about here.
Yeah.
I also don't want 90-degree beam angle because I got to move to, it's getting a big area and you're going to end up losing a ton of that energy on the sides of you and above you. So I do 30 degrees and it's all a matter of cost. So every time you want to improve on something, it's simply going to cost you more money.
Right.
But it's about getting what is going to be the best thing for the client.
Yeah.
So a 30-degree beam angle is going to come out and it's going to cover me just right.
Yeah, that was a big selling point for me because most of the other machines are 90.
They're all 60 or 90.
Yeah, 60 or 90.
Yeah.
And I didn't see any others that were 30. And I also really liked, honestly, that you're a small company and that it was so easy. I could just ask you a question on Instagram and you got back to me. I was like, wow, this is really cool. So let's change the topic just a little bit. How did you get into this? And like, how did this happen for you?
So I was a dental technician in the military.
Wow.
And then when I got out, I went to school for dental hygiene, did that for a number of years. I've struggled with a lot of, back, neck, wrist, typical hygiene type issues. So I got into doing a bit of teaching, a bit of sales, and I was working with a dental laser company. So that's really how I got my start, was with lasers. And now this was a giant laser that would actually cut teeth instead of a drill.
Wow.
It would cut soft tissue instead of a scalpel. So it was much more gentle to the body. So I tell everyone, find a dentist that truly has a good laser, particularly if you got kids, because a lot of times you don't need to numb them up. But so that same laser, if I took it and stuck it right here, it would burn a hole through my cheek.
Oh my gosh, this is a serious laser.
Oh, serious, yes. But if I pulled it away, dispersed the energy over this area, then we had great results with people with TMJ issues.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Same thing with intraoral. If we're doing an extraction, we could use the laser to cut around the tooth, remove the tooth, and then we could treat the socket area. And the post-op pain was significantly less with the laser. Recovery time was probably shortened by 50%. So people healed a lot quicker, a lot better with it as well. And then we had a handful of dentists who really thought outside the box. And so they would treat, a herpetic lesion. They would treat their father who had shingles. They would treat their kid who was sick. They'd treat just, the lymph node areas, or a kid with a sprained ankle. Or I had one doctor treated his wife who had appendicitis before they went to the hospital, treated it, went to the hospital, and then they still took it out, of course, but it was a dramatically decreased inflammation in the area. So that got me interested in learning more and more about that. And there's no school for red light. So it's it's finding mentors, finding the people that have been doing this for a long time and taking their courses. It's delving into, the thousands of research articles and learning what the science says on it. So it was, just diving. I mean, it's the deepest dive I've ever been in, and I'm still diving now because I'm constantly learning all the time. But so that's how I got my start. And then I started up the wellness center where I had the clients come in. And then shortly after that, thankfully, I started the home use devices because that was just a little bit prior to COVID, where the wellness center was shut down. But a lot of people at that time were, they weren't going to gyms, they weren't going to their health centers. And they're like, I want to start taking better care of myself now that I'm stuck at home. So you did see a lot of people getting more involved in certain types of devices that, they could have at home and help their health.
It's amazing. That's a really interesting story. Actually, so I worked in athletic training rooms. So when you were talking about all those pro athletes before, it really made a lot of sense to me. And we use laser therapy, and we used to, I don't do that anymore. I'm sure they still use it, but it came with a little bit of a red light in the laser. And there's a ball underneath it, and you can kind of move it around. So it's almost similar in some ways. I mean, that was about 5-6 years ago. I'm sure they have even more updated devices now, but I kind of wonder if that's similar to what you're doing here with LightPath LED, to see if there's similarities with that. But I haven't even thought about that. But as you were talking about this laser into the jaw, I was just thinking, wow, we used to laser ankles all the time, and we used to do this stuff. And athletes used to say that they like that the most too. They much rather get laser than any of the other modalities. And now I'm very bare boned. I don't even believe in doing like any modalities anymore, just for things like that. But I do think that like red light has a huge benefit in this world, especially if you have like an inflamed situation, like you roll an ankle, something like this. I think that getting that acute phase under control is really interesting. Yeah. So this is pretty new for you. You've only been doing this really since 2020, like this company specifically.
Well, like 2018 was when I started up the wellness center. And then it was probably towards the end of 2018 when I started with the home use devices. And it was small when I first started. It was, it was 90% my wellness center, 10% the home use devices. And then with COVID, that just kind of flipped everything.
Wow. Yeah. Cause it's becoming a very well-known name. And so congrats on that. Cause that's
thanks.
big.
It's been we do our total budget for last year on marketing was like a big zero. So,
wow.
You're not going to see us on, Google ads or Facebook ads or things. You're not going to see us with professional athletes promoting us. So it's really all been word of mouth.
I think that's the best.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on that, because that's not that long that you've been doing this or with the company, and it's very successful. And I know that because I know a lot of other people that talk about it and, have compared different red lights and really like yours. It's just so interesting. I kind of wonder how you even got into like making a red light device. Like that's difficult.
Well, here's how it goes is, I spent a lot of time researching companies because there's plenty of manufacturers. It's not like you can go and say, hey, I'm just going to build a big warehouse. I'm going to get all these components in, and I'm going to, you just couldn't possibly do that without millions and millions of dollars. So what you do is you find people that manufacture these already, and you say, hey, okay, I want to see what you've got already. Is it strong? Is it durable? Is it, can I work with you good? And then I've got to say to them, I'm not an engineer. So I go, okay, here's the wavelengths that I really like. I need it to be this kind of power. I need to have this kind of a beam angle. I need the decibels, the sound, like the fans, to be low enough. I need the EMFs to be low enough.
That was big. Yeah.
So I needed to go on this stand or that. So there's a lot of questions I threw at them, and I may get no's. There's some things that maybe they just can't do. I'm just throwing it out. Hey, is it even possible? But, you get enough yeses that you can really fine tune a device to fit, the size that you want, the wavelengths, the power, the pulsing was the big one. Finding someone that could do the pulsing, because we were the first company that put pulsing in a panel. And so then it's just a matter of constantly and having a manufacturer that can deal with the fact that I'm constantly tweaking my devices. So if I get enough research in on a specific wavelength, I may go, okay, let's switch. So let's change everything out and let's go with this particular wavelength as opposed to this one. Or let's change this or let's change that. So they've got to be able to deal with the annoyance of every month or two, me saying, for this next round, let's tweak it a little bit.
That's amazing. I love that. Because, yeah, there's definitely different things that you'll get with different companies. The one I had used like a couple years ago, it was a friend's. It had very high EMF. And even if you don't feel that, your body knows it. So I know that yours is low EMF, and I appreciate that about yours. But yeah, this was so awesome. Thank you so much. I have two more questions for you. This was like filled with such great information, and we've never had anybody on to talk about this. So this is a great topic that people don't always know about, and just want to help spread it. How can people find you is the first question. And then I have one more fun question.
Okay, so LightPathLED.com. So that's light LIGHTPATHLED.com. And then if you wanted to join the Facebook group, it's just simply search red light therapy for beginners.
Oh, cool. And I'll link all that.
And so we have, I mean, we've got about 11,000
It's great.
Members. A lot of people are, they want to come in, they're curious. So like, hey, will light help with this particular issue? They get their answer, and then they probably get their light. And that's, and honestly, the great majority of the people in my group are not users of my devices. They come from other companies, whether it's Juve or Platinum or whatever else.
Yeah.
But everyone's invited to come in and ask their questions, and whether I'm answering and helping them out, or if someone else with personal experience can say, yes, I did use this for plantar fasciitis or fibromyalgia, and here's my results. So it's a really good group of people that ask good questions, get good answers, and there's no know-it-alls, which is good.
That's really important. And yeah, it's kind of hard to know because there's so many different devices out there. So it's hard to know, right? Like when a market becomes saturated, how do you know which one's great? You have to really do your research and look deeply at it. And then you have to kind of trust yourself. And then when you get your purchase, you try it out and see what you feel. But there are a couple things on LightPath that when I was doing my research, which I did for a while, I just realized that LightPath LED has some different things compared to some of the other brands, like we talked about in this episode. Beam angle, just the different amount of hertz and the different pulsing things that you have available. And then on top of it, I said low EMF too. So yeah. And also affordability too, because some of these can be very expensive. So you could always look at all your different options. But I think that what you're doing is really, really great. Now I have one more fun question for you. So you're in upstate New York. It's cold there right now. But what do you do to move your brain and move your body? It could be something you do every day. It doesn't have to be every day.
Well, it's funny because you probably don't see it, but I'm shivering a little bit right now because I just started doing cold plunges.
Oh my gosh.
So I've got a tub out back, and I had to pull about 3 inches of ice in one big cube out. And I did about 4 minutes of it.
Wow. That's good. 4 minutes in one shot.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's terrible.
Horrible. I hate it. But it's invigorating, I guess. But I can come back in and I can sit in front of my pellet stove and warm up. But otherwise, I mean, it can be a little bit tough. It gets dark quick.
Yeah.
It can be depressing. I tell people, try to find something outdoors, whether that's, you can go skiing, you can go snowmobiling, you can do some cross-country skiing, you don't mind doing some hiking, but you got to find something to do outside and still try to get some sunlight in whenever you can, wherever you can. There's a reason why up in these northern climates, a lot of people rely on alcohol and drugs during the wintertime, because there's so much depression issues, because we're not getting out there, we're not being active, we're not getting our sunlight, we're not getting our red light therapy, and we're not getting our other, what I would call kind of hormesis type activity, which is all about strengthening our mitochondria. So it's tough. And you know what, if I can try to get in a couple, work related trips that just happen to be in Florida or down in Austin or in San Francisco, I'm going to do that come, January, February for sure.
Yeah, no, I can understand. I can relate. The one good thing the positive news about this is that next year there's no more daylight savings time on the East Coast.
It's so good.
I know. And it's going to be really, really helpful for people that struggle with this issue with the time and just having that depression, because I've seen it with my friends and my family, just how, I mean, the sun sets at like 4:15 in New York. And I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona right now.
Yeah,
and it's just
the whole time.
Yeah, you can go outside, go on a walk, hike, and it really is very different for the nervous system. And you can only do what you can in that environment. But
and I tell people,
take a vacation.
And I have no problem saying that, come wintertime, I suffer. So
it's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And a lot of times it takes a while before it kicks in and you go, oh, shit, this is why.
Yeah.
It's easy. We have a natural instinct that if we're down in the dumps or we have a lot of anxiety, that we try to point fingers is like, oh, this is the problem. Oh, I just got to fix this. I just got to do this. When so much of it is just, to a large degree, just biologic. It's just the way the body works when it doesn't have all the things around. So I try to force myself, I have to force myself to get into freezing cold water when it's 18 degrees outside. I have to force myself to do certain things. I have to force myself to put on a YouTube exercise workout. I had to force myself to do my 30 to 40 push-ups a day. I have to force myself to do a lot of these things. But if I can get up in the morning, get a lot of these things done early, then that helps to set the stage for the rest of my day.
I get that.
And hey, for all of us out there, all we want to do is just take the edge off.
Yeah.
We're not expecting miracles. We're not expecting that we're going to have a joyful rest of the day. We just want to take a little bit of the edge off and be able to, work through the day, get our stuff done, and have just some peace. If you can have some peace through the day, that's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a perfect way to end, because this was such a great podcast. And ultimately, you're right that we just need to give ourselves that homeostasis, whether it means getting into a cold tub or going on a walk or seeing the sunshine or getting in front of a red light. So there's a lot of different modalities to get to that same result, but it's always better when you use a few of them.
Yeah. And the thing is like, you don't have to break the bank on the stuff. There's a lot of things that I tell people, just doing breath holding can be really beneficial. Doing your meditation. I'm not big on meditation because I just can't get myself to that point yet, but that's the goal for me. So for now, it's the breath work, it's the breath holding. It can be intermittent fasting for some people. It can be simply taking ending your shower with 3 minutes on cold. You don't have to necessarily get a tub.
Yeah.
Other things that I like to do is, infrared sauna is great. You may be able to find a gym close by that has infrared sauna and may have red light therapy, although I'm not a big fan of a lot of things that they use there. But hey, if it's free and you can go there, get a workout in, get your sauna, get your light, and you can save a lot of money, then go that route. You don't have to break the bank to be healthy.
I agree with you 100%. It's just about what you can find and how open you are to finding it.
Right.
But thank you so much for coming on this podcast.
You're welcome. This was great.
Excited to get this out. So thank you.
Yeah. And I'm sure what we can do is also for people listening is put a 10% discount with a promo code that you can put on there.
Perfect.
And that just make life a little bit easier for them.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do that. We'll chat about that. And that sounds great. Yeah.